and some negative PR. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a dream.
On Friday, January 12th, as we head into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. annual holiday weekend, KBLA Talk 1580 will announce a historic climate justice campaign aimed at California communities of color. KBLA Talk 1580 is joined in this historic effort by both public and private partners including LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, Cal and Dow, the Sierra Club, and many other partners. There's a clear connection between Dr. King's moral conscience on the notion of reverence for all human life and the future of our world house. This year, on the MLK holiday weekend, KBLA assigns itself the task of elevating the climate conversation by amplifying the voices of those who are most impacted by the climate catastrophes we are witnessing in real time. Stay tuned for more details. At KBLA Talk 1580, Climate is king.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, of course, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com. or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, two conversations. Up first, we'll check in with the chair of the House January 6th Select Committee, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, about Donald Trump's continuing assault on the rule of law in America. You've been seeing these stories, of course, about this state and that state and the other state. One state puts him on the ballot, one state takes him off the ballot. Interesting stuff. We'll talk to Benny Thompson about it at the top of hour two. On the B side of hour two, we'll talk politics with author and senior political reporter at Politico, Jonathan Martin. So we'll do all politics in our second hour. In our third hour, we continue motivating you to maximize the moment that is 2024. We'll be joined by best-selling author, educator, spiritual writer, and practitioner Layla Delia. We'll talk to Layla about self-empowerment, self-care, and how to live a life of high vibrations in 2024. I like that. How to live a life of high vibrations in 2024. But in this first hour, two more conversations on the B side of this hour. A conversation with Reed Brody of Human Rights Watch about hope in the face of tyranny these days. And perhaps I'll get Reed to open up about his work and witness bringing dictators, literally, to account around the globe. But as I suspected when the news broke yesterday while we were on the air live, we commenced today's show in dialogue about the abrupt resignation of Dr. Claudine Gay, the history-making, now former president of Harvard. Made history coming in, made history going out. I'm pleased to be joined now by the former president of Dillard University, Dr. Walter Kimbrough, who I might add would still be president of Dillard had he not decided to move on to the next challenge in his life. He was anything but forced out at Dillard. Let me just tell you that the Blue Devils love Dr. Walter Kimbrough, as do I. Dr. Kimbrough, how are you today, sir? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's an honor, sir, to have you on the program. Thank you for your time. Let me just jump right in. There's so much that's happened in the 24 hours I was on the air here yesterday. In this story, it continues, of course, to be a developing story. Let me just give you a top line, you and the audience, a top line of what has happened over the last 24 hours. We know that Al Sharpton has called for a protest and is protesting, I believe, on Thursday. He's leading a protest on Thursday. He and others view this as an assault, an outright assault on black women. There are other women's groups who view this as an assault on women writ large. I said yesterday, these women have finally, after all these years, been deemed worthy enough to lead these elite institutions, and now one by one they're being knocked off. Representative Stefanik, Republican out of New York, quoted a quote from yesterday, 2 down, 1 to go. She's talking about UPenn having lost their president, Liz McGill, Harvard, Claudine Gay having lost their president. 1 more to go, Ms. Kornbluth at MIT. Those are the 3 persons at that table during this House committee hearing. So she said 2 down, 1 to go. We know that it was conservatives who led this push, and namely the New York Post, I should say. The New York Post led this assault, this charge in the media. The Post, I remind you, is owned by one Rupert Murdoch, who also owns, of course, Fox News. So it was a conservative media outlet with other conservatives who pushed this storyline to get rid of Claudine Gay. And there's a lot more we'll unpack in a few moments. Just want to give you a top line. But this is being seen without any question or equivocation whatsoever as a victory for the political right. It's being seen as a victory for them, and there are many who are concerned that this is the new play in their playbook to attack and assault black people. They will do nothing. They will stop at nothing to undermine black folk in positions of power that they do not like. And this is just another example what we're going to see in the coming months and years on top of the book bans and everything else. It's just another play in their playbook. It's getting funky, it's getting messy, it's getting ugly, and the story, again, is still developing. All that said, Dr. Kimbrough, your initial thoughts, and we'll unpack it in the 25 minutes we have, but your initial thoughts when you heard that she had decided to resign.
So, yeah, I've been thinking about it from a different perspective over the last couple of weeks because I've been worried about her. And she acknowledged that in her letter about the kind of hatred and racist emails and calls that she had been receiving. And that's the kind of climate that we're in now. So I was just at some point saying I wanted her to resign for her own just well-being because they weren't going to let up. And as you can see, they celebrated Chris Rufo and Stefanik. They're just celebrating like this. I mean, using language like scalping, which is a very violent, process. They're ginning this up the entire time for an entire month. And she was still a relatively new president. She hadn't been there 6 months, and you're getting this kind of hatred. She wasn't prepared for that. So I was hoping that she would look at that contract, get a great deal, which it seems like she got, and they're upset about that now. But it's like you have a 10-year position, and you can collect your presidential salary. Take that and let all the headache go because you don't owe Harvard anything, and take care of yourself because it was just up to be that way. So in some regards, I'm glad that she did this because they weren't going away. And it just can't be healthy for her.
Yep. So to your mind, this is more than anything else about her own self-care.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I know people are just worried about it. What does this say in terms of how this looks for a black Ivy League president? But it's not like we haven't had one before. Ruth Simmons, who was a graduate of Dillard University, was president of Brown, started in 2001, and she was there for over a decade. So we've had people do that before, but I was just worried about her because it's a different kind of environment that we're in, this post-Trump environment, and people on social media are really mean and evil. And I know she was getting it left and right 24 hours a day.
Shout out to Dillard. In case you didn't know that, the first black person to lead an Ivy League, Ruth Simmons, is a graduate of Dillard. As you heard Dr. Kimbrough say, he was their president for 10 years as well. So again, just getting started in this conversation with Dr. Kimbrough about the fate of one Claudine Gay and what it means not just for her. It's clear to me this is a bigger story than just her. If this was just about her, we wouldn't be talking about it so much. But it's not just about Claudine Gay. There's so many tentacles that offshoot this particular story. We'll get more into it when we come forward. Dr. Kimbrough on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Hey LA, save water and put money in your pocket with rebates from LADWP. Start saving with free shower heads and faucet aerators. Then save with every flush when you upgrade to a water-efficient toilet and get a $250 rebate. You can also save on every load of laundry with a high-efficiency clothes washer and get a $500 rebate. That's right, LADWP customers can get $500 rebates on qualifying clothes washers. See all the ways to save at ladwp.com/save.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of This Light of Ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This Light of Ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This Light of Ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
I teed this up, Dr. Kimbrough, and you commented on it. Let me go a little deeper, though. How do you read the fact that Republicans across the nation are viewing the demise of Claudine Gay as a political victory?
That's exactly what it is. It wasn't really about qualifications. I was watching something yesterday, and there was a great example being made that the former president of Stanford University, I think in November of 2022, they realized that he had fabricated some research. Mm-hmm. And that went on until that summer when he finally resigned. But no one mentioned anything about, DEI or qualifications. This is a completely different, kind of attack on Claudine Gay, where everybody's saying this is about her qualifications and DEI. They never questioned his qualifications, even though he fabricated the research, because he's a white man. Mm-hmm. And that's part of, we have to just deal with it like that. So people are trying to say, don't make this about race. It's absolutely about race. And it's the politics of, we're trying to get rid of DEI. First it was CRT, now they moved to DEI. And you're seeing that in all of the statements that are being released. The chair of the House Education Committee, Virginia Fox, has a statement, and she's talking about getting rid of the woke faculty members. I mean, it's all political.
Mm-hmm. That's why I say it's more than just about her. This is not, if you think this is just about plagiarism or, for that matter, anti-Semitism, and I asked this question rhetorically yesterday. I'm still trying to figure out how we got from anti-Semitism to plagiarism. That's a whole nother conversation, how we jump from one thing to the other. And obviously the point is that they will stop at nothing. When they put a target on your back, they will stop at nothing to get you. And if they can't get you on anti-Semitism, they'll get you on plagiarism or something. Jaywalking, if they would have got her on jaywalking if they could have something. But they will stop at nothing until they get you. Speaking of plagiarism, the student newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, the paper on the campus there, well-known, highly regarded student newspaper, one of the best in the country, wrote an editorial, and they essentially said, I paraphrase here, they said that she deserved to stay. They did not call, the student paper did not call for her resignation based primarily on the fact that her plagiarism was sloppy work, as they put it. It was sloppy, but not the dishonest version of plagiarism. What they mean by that is it was sloppy in that she didn't give some proper citations. So some of the work was not, her scholarly work was not properly cited. So the citations were off or missing. But it wasn't a flat-out dishonest version of just taking somebody's stuff and not giving them credit at all and doing that for page after page after page. So they make a distinction, not Tavis. The paper, the students make a distinction between sloppy plagiarism and dishonest version of plagiarism. And so they called on her to not be forced out, and yet she got forced out anyway. But your thoughts about this notion of plagiarism, again, I raise it because we discussed this yesterday. To your point about the president of Stanford, I want to be abundantly clear. Claudine Gay is not the first or last person to be accused of missing some citations in their work. Let me just be honest with you. If you literally want to know, if you want to know the truth for real, half of the faculty at Harvard and other places probably wouldn't be there if we put, if we took a microscope and looked at missing citations in their work. A lot of these major scholars have graduate students doing the work with them. So if you really want to just weed people out, you can weed out probably half the faculty at Harvard. And I raised some names yesterday of people who've been accused of this and survived. Doris Kearns Goodwin, one of the nation's noted historians, presidential historians. I love Doris, but she got accused of plagiarism. In fact, did it years ago. It ain't stopped her career. Lawrence Tribe, one of the most noted legal law professors at Harvard, he got caught in front of a committee at Harvard. And the person whose work he stole was in the committee hearing and laid out in detail what Lawrence Tribe did to steal his work. It didn't hurt Lawrence Tribe. I told you yesterday, Joseph Biden, your president, plagiarized Neil Kinnock on the campaign trail when he first ran for president back in the 80s. He plagiarized a UK politician named Neil Kinnock, and Joe Biden years later ends up being elected president of these United States. I got a long list of folk who I could name if I had the time that have been accused and been found guilty of plagiarism. It did not stop them. I repeat, Joe Biden later got elected president. So there is a conversation to be had about this plagiarism thing. We know it's a red herring in this case, but your thoughts, Dr. Kimbrough, about the way we view what plagiarism is and what it isn't in scholarly work, since you are a PhD.
Yeah, I think that in her case, it was a lot of sloppy work. I mean, I think she has to acknowledge that. I think what she did, and they started to make some corrections. But like you indicated, there are a ton of people. You can add Neil Gorsuch to that list as well.
Absolutely.
He did it too.
Supreme Court Justice, yes.
Supreme Court, right. So it didn't hurt it. So I think there should be a standard in terms of the kind of work that you do. And I think that there had been a penalty for her because of the plagiarism. It taints her reputation as a scholar. So, but in terms of, was that, I guess for me, is the quality of her work or her academic work a criteria for her to be the president of Harvard? And for me, the answer is no, because particularly you have people who will, go after her, and now they're saying, well, she wasn't qualified to be the president because, her scholarship is light. And I'm like, well, y'all didn't say anything about Ben Sass at the University of Florida, who openly says that I'm a part-time academic. I mean, he's not even – so it was okay for him, and he's not doing anything academic, and University of Florida is a major university, and you don't say anything about him. So people, we use information, when it benefits us or our way of thinking. And so because they didn't like Claudine Gay, this is, the worst thing in the world. If we liked her, say she had been a Donald Trump as president of Harvard with the same thing, they would have made all kinds of excuses for him. Oh, that's not a big deal. It depends on who they like. So they just need to be honest about it. We don't like her, so we're using this. But if it was somebody that they like, they would ignore it and be like, I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, I laughed at that very point yesterday because people keep you're hearing this this refrain, as you mentioned, growing louder and louder every day, that she wasn't qualified to be president in the first place. Well, we talk president of Harvard, not president of the United States. I mean, Donald Trump wasn't qualified to be president either, and yet he won. And may win again. So don't talk to me about qualification. George Bush wasn't qualified to be president.
He wasn't qualified.
And he was president for 2 terms. So please don't start the conversation about who's qualified and who ain't. And don't talk to me about meritocracy. I ain't trying to hear that. But there's another question I want to get your take on as a former college president of not one but two institutions, Philander Smith and Dillard. You know what it means to be an African-American college president and a scholar, and I'm wondering whether or not you have any sympathy or empathy for those black scholars. Because let's face it, black people are not a monolith. I read black folk on both sides of this conversation, and there are some who believe that, pardon the pun, she's given a black eye to black academics with this behavior or misbehavior. Your comment?
No, I don't think that she has. Once again, she was in a very tough position where you start in July as a president. We have this life-changing world event in October. She's a new president, and then the students on that campus, which she can't control, they do some things that upset a lot of people, and then they're saying, what are you going to do about it? I think about Joseph Byrd, who was the longtime dean of students at Xavier University. He used to always tell parents in orientation, don't expect me to do in 18 months what you didn't do in 18 years. Meaning, these people came to Harvard. They were students there. They had these whole ideas. And so you want to hold the president of Harvard for the actions of these people that they, and people try to blame higher ed. Well, you guys are teaching them X, Y, and Z. No, their mama taught them that. Their daddy taught them that. They came there like that. And so those are the challenges. So I think people have put too much on her to say this hurts all black academics because of what happened. I give her a lot of grace because she was a new president dealing with an unimaginable situation, and then a couple of months later, you're sitting in front of a hostile Congress in this hyper-partisan environment. It was set up to fail, as you mentioned earlier. Then you had three women there, so you saw the misogyny on display, even from the women on there. I don't believe they would have talked to three men like that.
I was just about to ask you that. Tell me a bit more about the way you think gender has played itself or is playing out in this situation.
Yeah, no, I think that was definitely a big part of it. I think they went at those women even harder because these are prestigious institutions. So I think they're, in most people's minds who question them harshly, is that their idea of the president of an Ivy League institution is a white man, which is, that is what it has looked like for 98% of the time. So they are outliers in terms of what people think of in the Ivy League. And I think people attack them harshly because they were women. I don't think they would have attacked men like that. I laugh at my wife. I just like, man, they lucky I wasn't there because it would have gone a whole nother way. It would have gone a whole nother. It's like, no, you're not gonna talk to me like that. We're not having that. I'm pushing back real hard. So I think that because they were women, they were treated differently too. But people's idea of Ivy League president is an old white man.
Yeah. To your point about what might have happened had you been there or some other black presidents been sitting at that table, it would have been a very different conversation. Of that, I am certain. Y'all wouldn't have stood for that. And yet, I think we have to be willing to admit, at least I will. I don't know what your take is. I can't speak for you. I'll let you speak for yourself. I said on this program, Dr. Kimbrough, that while they gave an answer that was technically correct about free speech, it does depend on context. They gave an answer that is legally correct when it comes to the questions that they were being asked, the questions specifically that they were being asked. And yet at the same time, I can admit to you that they missed a major moment for moral clarity. They just missed a moment for moral clarity. So had you been there and you've been pressed on that very question about free speech, about speech on college campuses, how might you have responded to that?
So you respond to her to say, yes, it is against our policy. And so what we do with each case is you look at the situation, you do an investigation, you go through a proper due process hearing, and then you make a decision about how you adjudicate that. So I don't have to argue that to be like, yes, it's against it's against our code, it's against the values of the institution. Yes, that language is problematic. So what do? We look at our conduct code, we do an investigation, and we give them due process. But we're just not going to just go out and just say, we think you said X, Y, and Z, and then kick you out of school. We have to go through a process. I think even a deeper conversation too is, and I don't know if they would have been able to handle this conversation because they kept saying, well, if there's a call for genocide, it's like, well, does it matter who makes the call? If it's some 18-year-old person who just says, I'm calling for everybody in Congress to resign, are you going to resign? Or do you feel threatened by that? You don't feel threatened by that.
Yeah.
You don't care. You don't care about that. So it's like that's a deeper conversation. We made a big deal. You have some undergraduate that says, I'm calling for X, Y, and Z. You act like Hamas is listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or anybody. So that's the issue. But I think you can acknowledge her first. I think you temper some of that down by saying, yes, exactly. This is wrong. We deal with the code. And I fault the people who prepped them. Once again, you have, as I keep saying, you have 3 presidents who combined had less than 3 years of experience as a president.
Mm-hmm.
So they were all really new presidents. They were very dependent on the legal team, and the lawyers are conservative. So they gave them very conservative, lawyerly answers, and that got them destroyed.
I just was in dialogue with somebody about this yesterday, and they were like, but okay, fine. The lawyers told them this. But they're brilliant. They're scholars. They didn't become presidents by being stupid. Why couldn't they, in that moment, see a way to pivot? Dr. Kimbrough, your thoughts, your comments about what happens when you're a college president and you're in the hot seat and the lawyers for your institution have told you to say X, Y, or Z, and you feel like you can't pivot in that moment, even though you're smart enough to know what the question really is and how you ought to be answering it.
Right, but see, I think they didn't pivot because they were still too new. Once again, Claudine Gay, by that time, had been president of Harvard for 5 months.
Exactly.
And the last 2, she had been catching hell because of what happened October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
So she was very dependent on them. Somebody who was more established would have been like, no, we're going to do it like this. They would have had more agency to sort of be able to think this through.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't have the agency. They were just too new. So they were going to be very dependent upon what the lawyers say because they're like, this is a big moment for me as a new president, and I got to get it right. So let me listen to what they're telling me to do.
Nope, fair enough. 90 seconds to go. Last word to you, of course. What does this victory for the political right say to you? What does it portend for the political election season that we are in and headed more deeply toward between now and November?
Oh, everybody got to understand it's on.
Yeah.
It's going to be on. And, for black scholars and just black folks in general, I keep telling people, I'm reminded what my mom told me. My mom grew up in California. She went to Cal Berkeley in the 50s. And she used to tell me and my brother, you got to be 2 or 3 times better than white folks. You can't be equal. You got to be better. So people you got to get your stuff together because they're coming for you. And so you have to be so tight with everything that you're doing that even if they come for you, you got it. So that's just the climate that we're in. So it's a wake-up call for people just thinking like, everything's going to be good. And they have declared war.
They have indeed. I got 40 seconds left here. Your thoughts very quickly on the status of free speech on college campuses. Is it in trouble?
Yeah, because people are deciding what free speech they want to accept. I mean, free speech is messy. And even what those students at Harvard were saying, if you really believe in free speech, that's okay. You need to be able to have dialogue about that. Mm-hmm. But now people are pushing back. So we got to have deeper conversations about what does free speech mean, what does it look like, and how do we really wrestle with it? Because I think it is valuable, particularly in higher ed.
Dr. Walter Kimbrough, former president of Dillard University in New Orleans, where we are heard there. And I love our station at 12:30 a.m. WOK. Check us out in New Orleans. If you have not listened to us, tell your friends, for that matter, who are in New Orleans to check us out on the radio there. Dr. Kimbrough, good to have you on, sir. All the best to you. Appreciate your time.
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. When we come forward, more of our conversation on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden is ramping up his 2024 re-election campaign. The president will deliver a speech in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, Saturday to mark 3 years since a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. On Monday, Biden will visit Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where 9 people were killed in a mass shooting by a white supremacist in 2015. In Maryland, leadership is changing at the top of the Bowie Police Department. Dwayne Preston was sworn in as police chief Tuesday. Preston, who is African American, has been with the department since 2012 and also spent time with the Prince George's County Police Department. Bowie is home to one of Maryland's 4 HBCUs. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers are back in action tonight. The Lakers are at home against the Miami Heat. 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. The Lakers have some work to do. They've lost 2 straight and are 3-8 since winning the in-season tournament. The Clippers are in Phoenix tonight. They've won 3 straight and have the 4th best record in the Western Conference. 6 p.m. tip-off in Phoenix on Valley Sports. The NFL fined Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper $300,000 for throwing a drink at fans during Sunday's game at Jacksonville. Tepper tossed his drink late in the 4th quarter from his open-air luxury suite while his team was losing 26-0. Tepper has a net worth of $20.6 billion. The fine won't have much of an impact on his bank account, but he got a strong message from the NFL and some negative PR. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Granddad, what's good?
Hey there, got us a quarter pounder with cheese and McNuggets.
Wow, haven't had our special McDonald's order in a minute.
Heard your little tic-tac-toe dance didn't get no likes.
Oh man, is Mom telling everybody?
You know she is.
There's a deal for every favorite grandson at McDonald's. Right now, get one favorite like a quarter pounder with cheese or 10-piece chicken McNuggets and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Staples Print Big Sale means the more you print, the more you save. Get $20 off your print purchase of $100 or more, $50 off your print purchase of $200 or more, and $100 off your print purchase of $300 or more. Ends 2/10/24. See staples.com/print for details. Print more, save more at Staples.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Our guest in this half hour is Reed Brody, who's an author and counsel and spokesperson for Human Rights Watch. He joins us now to talk about the face of tyranny around the globe and how we can inspire some hope in the midst of all that. And we'll get him to share, I think, an inspiring story about bringing dictators to account. Reed Brody, good to have you on this program. How are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Tavis.
It's good to have you on the program. Let me jump right in and make the most of our time here. Let me just start with this. For those who are unfamiliar with the work of Human Rights Watch, tell me about the work and witness of this organization.
Sure. Well, actually, I left Human Rights Watch about a few years ago after working there for 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
But Human Rights Watch, like Amnesty International, is one of the premier human rights organizations in the world. It monitors abuses, it reports on them, and then it advocates to try to change, to stop those abuses by putting pressure, by raising the cost of abuse, by shaming, sometimes by trying to get sanctions or other diplomatic or economic pressure, and it works in all parts of the world, including the United States.
Yep. When you tell me about the pivot from HRW, Human Rights Watch, to The Nation magazine as a columnist there, and what you were hoping to accomplish by being a part of this organization to then writing about these issues for The Nation.
Well, I felt like after leaving Human Rights Watch, I now continue to do this kind of work around the world. I'm doing it independently, but I also thought it was important to bring it to a public audience. I particularly write about issues like double standards in international justice. My specialty has been, as you mentioned, going after bad guys, going after dictators, helping victims. But we see that in this field there is a real double standard. It is, it's never easy, but one can bring to justice, an Augusto Pinochet of Chile, or in my case, Hissan Habre of Chad. But when those abuses are being committed by powerful Western actors, it's much more, in fact, it's almost impossible. And we see with the International Criminal Court in The Hague, we see around the world that powerful Western actors tend to get away with atrocities or with supporting abuses. And that's what I wanted to bring in my writing for The Nation and for other publications.
Mm-hmm. Here we are at the start of 2024, and I mentioned this point yesterday that whatever we think this year is going to bring us, we know for a fact that we've brought at least a couple of wars. There's certainly more than that, but the two that stand out for most Americans, I think, are what's happening with Israel and Hamas, of course, Israel and Palestine, and then, of course, Ukraine and Russia. That continues unabated. And it raises questions, as I said earlier, about how we find some hope in this year in the face of the tyranny that abounds. You have written and done all kinds of work around the issue of, and you teed this up a moment ago, on the issue of the U.S. mistreatment, the United States' mistreatment of prisoners in this so-called war on terror. What can you tell me about where you think we are with the way that we treat or maltreat people in 2024?
Well, as you say, I mean, I wrote for Human Rights Watch when I was there several reports on how, in particular, the Bush administration treated prisoners in the war on terror. Guantanamo, the use of what we would consider to be torture, things like waterboarding prisoners, things like sending them, rendering them to countries like Syria and Libya, where they were tortured, we knew they were going to be tortured. And when I was at Human Rights Watch, we actually put out a report showing what the case would be for torture for George Bush, George's son, for Dick Cheney, for George Tenet, for Donald Rumsfeld. But nothing ever happened. Nobody ever, President Obama came in, he stopped the torture program, to his credit, but his policy was, let's turn the page, let's not look back. And yet when other countries do this, we demand that people who commit torture be brought to justice. But I also think, you mentioned two very, the leading concerns in the world today, which are Ukraine and Israel-Palestine. When Russia, invaded, committed its aggression against Ukraine, and began to commit daily war crimes, there was a massive response from the international community, from the International Criminal Court, as there should have been. The people sprung into action. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court went to Ukraine. He described the country as a crime scene. Other countries, including the United States, who's not even a member of the International Criminal Court, rushed in to support the International Criminal Court in its investigation. And the ICC has, in fact, indicted, as it should, Vladimir Putin already for the transfer of children from Ukraine to Russia. On the other hand, when Israel, in response to the October 7th criminal attacks by Hamas, when Israel has now pummeled Gaza into the ground and killed 1 out of every 100 people in Gaza, and has attacked hospitals and schools and has prevented humanitarian assistance from coming in, we've seen largely a much less aggressive approach from the international community.
Let me. When we come forward, I want to get your read on why you think we're seeing a less aggressive approach, given what Israel is doing. To use your phrase, pummeling Palestine, pummeling Hamas, and your read is that we're seeing a less aggressive approach from the world community. I want to get your sense of why that is and get your phone line fixed. The longer you talk, the worse you sound, and we can't tolerate that. We want folk to hear you. You're listening to Reed Brody. At least you will be listening to Reed Brody a little bit better when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I have a dream. On Friday, January 12th, as we head into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. annual holiday weekend, KBLA Talk 1580 will announce a historic climate justice campaign aimed at California communities of color. KBLA Talk 1580 is joined in this historic effort by both public and private partners including LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, Cal and Dow, the Sierra Club, and many other partners. There's a clear connection between Dr. King's moral conscience on the notion of reverence for all human life and the future of our world house. This year, on the MLK holiday weekend, KBLA assigns itself the task of elevating the climate conversation by amplifying the voices of those who are most impacted by the climate catastrophes we are witnessing in real time. Stay tuned for more details. At KBLA Talk 1580, Climate is King.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Do you have both Medi-Cal and Medicare?
If so, the new LA Care plan called Medicare Plus can help you get the most out of your health plan for $0.
LA Care provides personalized service to Angelinos like us.
Plus, it gives us access to doctors and specialists across Los Angeles County.
For zero cost, we get access to full benefits.
From vision coverage,
in-home support services,
to prescription drug coverage,
and a quarterly over-the-counter allowance,
plus personal equipment,
meal programs,
a gym membership,
and so much more.
For more than 25 years,
LA Care has provided Angelinos with access to quality health care at an affordable cost.
For our families,
our seniors,
our community,
it's a plus.
It's a plus
for all of us.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Reed Brody, who's a columnist for The Nation magazine, veteran war crimes prosecutor, and spent a lot of time working with Human Rights Watch. You were saying, watching my time, we was getting away from me, Reed. You were saying a moment ago that, to your mind at least, the reaction of the world community has been, I don't think anybody in this audience, that is surprised by this, but I think we probably agree with you. But I'm curious as to why. You made the point a moment ago that the reaction of the world community to Israel's pummeling of Hamas, as you put it, has been different than in other situations and scenarios.
Yeah, well, it also depends which world community we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The West has certainly, rushed to the defense of Ukrainian civilians much more than Palestinian civilians. But very interestingly, last week, South Africa filed a case at the World Court, at the International Court of Justice. That's different from the ICC. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is where individuals are prosecuted for war crimes. The International Court of Justice is the World Court of the United Nations, which decides disputes between states. And South Africa, in a landmark, unprecedented filing, filed a case accusing Israel of violating the Genocide Convention, of committing genocide or inciting genocide or threatening genocide in its war in Gaza. And that is a potential game changer. Because you have a country that has a lot of moral authority, South Africa, invoking a treaty that both South Africa and Israel have signed, the Convention Against Genocide, and going to a court that is hard to disqualify. The International Court of Justice, the United States, in fact, currently the United States is the chair, has the presidency of the International Court of Justice. So I think when I talked about the international community in the first instance, I was talking really about the West.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if we look at how the world lines up on this conflict, we see, in fact, that the United States is quite isolated. It had to use its veto at the Security Council to prevent a resolution calling for a ceasefire. It then watered down a resolution, a subsequent resolution, so that it didn't call for a ceasefire. Mm-hmm. At the General Assembly, an overwhelming number of countries have called on Israel, to stop what many see, I think correctly, as a campaign that is riddled with war crimes.
Yeah. When we come forward in our remaining moments, I want to push you on this notion that what South Africa did. It's a bold move. We saw this happen, of course, late last year. We discussed it on this program when South Africa made this move to break with Israel over the pummeling of Palestine. Again, it was a major story. We discussed it on this program, and I'm curious though as to how you'd respond to people who perhaps somewhat cynically would say that nothing that any black African country who would do could be considered game changing. It was a bold move by them, but is it putting too much on it to call it game changing? We'll talk about that in our remaining moments with Reed Brody when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Hey, Reed Brody, got about 4 minutes left here, and I want to come back to this issue that you raised a moment ago. It's clear that South Africa was rather bold in their move, and there are many people celebrating their genocide case against Israel. It does, in fact, set up a high-stakes legal battle at the UN's top court, but again, a bold move for a country to take Israel to court over the genocide as they see it in Palestine. And yet you refer to it as a game changer. And I raise this question only because I know people are cynical about Africa and African countries and whether or not anything that they do in a battle of these proportions could be seen as game changing. Tell you why you use that phrase.
Well, because if the ICJ issues a ruling that Israel is committing or inciting genocide, that ruling is binding. It doesn't. I mean, theoretically, it's binding. Obviously, the ICJ doesn't have troops to back it up, and the normal enforcement mechanism for an ICJ ruling is the Security Council, of course, where the United States has a veto. But a ruling from the World Court that Israel has to cease and desist, which is what is going to come up next week in the effectively an injunction hearing, is binding not just on Israel, but it means that people who support Israel, who provide arms to Israel, are also coming under the purview of that decision. UN decision.
And disabuse me of the notion that if in fact that does happen, that Israel just won't ignore it and keep doing exactly what they're doing.
Oh, I think they might. Look, the United States did that as well when the United States was ordered by the ICJ to stop supporting the Contras in Nicaragua.
Precisely.
The United States walked out of the court and just continued to do it.
Exactly.
But that's the kind of thing that, not a lot of European countries, a lot of countries in the middle are going to say, well, wait a second, we have a ruling from the World Court. Now we are going to have to think about, our attitude to this. So it's not going to stop what Israel is doing, but I think it's going to make it a lot harder for other countries to support that.
Yeah. From your mouth to God's ears, we shall see. I got about 90 seconds here left. With regard to this particular crisis, do you see this thing letting up in any way? We keep reading stories that Israel's pulling some troops out of certain parts of this battle, but do you see this thing in any way slowing down in the near term?
Well, I'm not an expert on the Middle East. I think Israel is making the same mistake that the United States made after the attacks of 9/11. The world was sympathizing with Israel after Hamas's attacks, like they were sympathizing with the United States, and then we just went to the dark side, and that's what Israel is doing. And I think Israel is losing all that sympathy. I don't see how this is making Israel safer.
Nope, you can go too far, and we are Exhibit A. We, the U.S., Exhibit A, in that regard. And now Israel is offering itself up as another exhibit. But I digress on that. Reed Brody, author, longtime executive at Human Rights Watch, columnist for The Nation magazine, veteran war crimes prosecutor, and his latest book is called To Catch a Dictator. Reed, out of time now. Thanks for your insights today. We'll have you back on somewhere down the road. Appreciate you, sir. All the best to you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Tavis.
Good to have you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Reed. Good to have you on. Benny Thompson, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore.